I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, scary stories, or paranormal encounters that you'd like to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. I've had nightmares before. Sleep paralysis, weird dreams, all of it. But this is the only time something happened that I still can't convince myself was just in my head. It was a completely normal night. Nothing weird leading up to it. It was raining very heavily, but that's not unusual in the UK. It was just constant rain hitting the windows, that steady sound you kind of fall asleep to. I went to bed around midnight. I was exhausted, and I fell asleep almost immediately. Then, at some point in the night, I woke up. I didn't check the time, but it felt like it was in the middle of the night. Everything was still dark. The rain was still pouring outside. At first, nothing felt off. I wake up randomly sometimes, so I didn't think anything of it. But then I looked across my room, and that's when I saw it. In the corner of my room, there was a figure. Tall, thin. It looked almost stretched. Completely black, solid, just standing there. Standing next to it was my best friend and his little sister, just standing there with it, facing it. And I remember his little sister. She was pointing at it, like she was trying to show me that it was there, like she wanted me to see it. And for a second, my brain tried to make sense of it. Why are they here and how did they get in? But before I could even react, they were gone. All of them, just gone. Then I felt this sudden jolt, like that falling feeling when you wake up too fast. I blinked and looked around. I was still in my room and everything was normal, dark, rain still hitting the windows, and for a second I thought, okay, that had to be a dream. It just didn't feel real. But then, right in front of me, my wardrobe doors flew open, violently, like something had yanked them apart, and I froze. Because everything inside was still. Nothing fell, nothing was disturbed, just the doors swinging. And then they started slamming. Open, closed, over and over, fast and loud, echoing through the room. And I tried to move, but I couldn't. My body wouldn't respond. I was completely stuck, like I was glued to the bed. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. My mouth was moving. I could feel it, but there was no sound. And that's when the panic really hit, because I could feel everything. The bed under me, the air, my heartbeat. I was awake. I knew I was awake. So how could this be a dream? The doors kept slamming, faster and louder, and then suddenly I could move. I shot up out of bed, and the wardrobe doors slammed shut. Silence. Just like that. And I just stood there, trying to process what just happened, trying to convince myself that it wasn't real, my heart racing, but then I heard something downstairs, a cupboard, opening and closing. Slow at first, and then faster, over and over again, and that's when the fear came back even worse. Because my family would never be downstairs at this time, ever. So I ran, straight out of my room, down the hall, into my dad's room, and woke him up. I told him something was downstairs. He could tell I was serious, so we both went down together. Every light was off. The house was completely quiet. We checked the kitchen. Nothing. Checked the cupboards, and they were all closed. Nothing was out of place. There was no movement. There was no sound. There was nothing, but then we noticed something. The living room door was open, and we never left that door open. Neither of us could explain it. So I went back upstairs, and I didn't sleep. I turned my TV on and left it on that entire night, just for noise, so it didn't feel too quiet. To this day, I still don't know what that was, because it didn't feel like a dream. And my dad remembers me waking up. He remembers checking downstairs, so I know that part was real, which means something had to have happened. And a few days before that, when I was home alone, I had heard someone running behind me, chasing me down the stairs. And when I turned around, no one was there. So now I can't tell what's worse.
What would you do if your boyfriend came home from a hunting trip and he seemed normal during the day and then completely different at night? This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about a woman who says that her boyfriend went on a hunting trip, but he brought something back with him. I've told pieces of this story before, but never all of it straight through, mostly because people hear hunting trip and came back different and immediately tune out. I'm not saying he was possessed. I'm saying something happened to him, and after he got back, nights in that house stopped feeling safe. This was about 5 years ago. My boyfriend then, his name was Nate, and he went on a weekend hunting trip with two of his cousins. They did that every fall. It was normal for them. He left Friday morning, texted me once that afternoon, and then didn't hear much until Sunday evening when he came back. At first, he just seemed worn out. He looked bad, honestly, not like he was drunk or hungover, more like he'd been sick and hadn't recovered. His eyes looked sunken in, and his face had that flat, tired look people get when they haven't slept enough. I asked if he was okay, and he said the weekend had been rough, and one of the nights they barely slept because of the rain and some problem with where they were staying. Fine, that tracked. He showered, he ate a little, and he went to bed. The first weird thing happened that same night. I woke up around 2 and he wasn't in bed. I found him in the kitchen, standing by the sink with a glass of water in his hand. No lights on except the stove clock. He was just standing there. I asked what he was doing, and he looked at me like I'd interrupted him in the middle of something important. Then he blinked and said he couldn't sleep. It should have stayed something small, but it didn't. Over the next week, he started getting up almost every night, sometimes for water, and sometimes I'd hear him downstairs moving around. Once I found him standing at the back door looking out into the yard. I asked him what he was looking at, and he said he thought he heard something. During the day, he still acted enough like himself that I kept talking myself out of being scared. He went to work, he answered all my texts, and he joked around with me. He just felt thinner somehow. Not only physically, but as a person. Like less of him was there. Then one night I woke up and he was already near my face. That is still the worst part for me. I opened my eyes because I could feel somebody there, and Nate was kneeling beside the bed. His face was so close to mine that I could hear him breathing through his nose. His mouth was hanging open, way too wide, not like a yawn, open. He was staring straight at me. I jerked backwards so hard I hit the headboard. I said his name and then I asked what he was doing. He didn't answer. He just blinked. And then slowly he got up, turned, and walked out of the room without saying anything at all. He left the bedroom door wide open behind him. I sat there frozen, listening. A few seconds later, I heard the basement door open. Then, from close to where the basement stairs were, I heard him whisper my name. That was the first time I locked the bedroom door. The next morning, he acted embarrassed. He said he must have been half asleep and didn't remember. The next morning, he acted embarrassed. He said he must have been half asleep and didn't remember coming to my side of the bed. I wanted to believe that. I really did. And then I started hearing him talking in the basement. We rented a small house with an unfinished basement where the laundry and water heater were. Nate hated that basement before all of this. He used to make me go down first if we both needed something because he said it felt creepy down there. So the fact that he suddenly kept going down there at night was strange on its own. The first time I heard him, I thought he was on the phone. Then I realized there were pauses, long ones, like he was listening for a response. I went to the top of the stairs and called his name, and then everything went quiet. A second later, he came up looking annoyed, not startled. I asked who he was talking to, and he said no one. That started happening more often. He'd disappear from bed, I'd hear him in the basement. If I interrupted, silence, and then him coming up the stairs. He always looked irritated that I had gone looking. Then there were the flies. The first morning, I found dead flies on the bathroom counter, and I thought maybe the window had been open or something. It was a row of 6 or 7, all lined up by the sink. I threw them away without saying anything. And the next day, there were more, same place. I asked Nate if he was messing with me, and he just stared at me for a second and said no. Not joking, not confused, just a flat no. I didn't ask again. The night that made me leave started the same as the others. I woke up and he wasn't in bed. The basement light was on and I could hear talking. Only this time, when I got to the stairs, I could hear two voices. One was him, and the other one was lower, much lower. I didn't mean another person standing down there. I mean, it sounded close enough to him that for a second my brain tried to tell me maybe it also was him somehow. Like the sound was coming out of the same body, but in different ways. I went down 3 steps before I stopped. The bare bulb over the washer was on, and Nate was standing near the far wall facing the concrete. I said his name. He didn't turn around. Then the lower voice said, "Don't come down here." I ran back upstairs. I locked myself in the bathroom and called my sister. I told her enough that she came and she got me that night. I stayed with her for 3 days. Nate kept texting me like nothing had happened, asking if I was upset, asking if I needed space, not once asking why I had left the house in the middle of the night. When I finally went back with my sister to get my things, Nate was there. He looked even worse. He'd lost more weight and his face looked hollow now. There were bruises around one wrist and one side of his neck, like someone had grabbed him there hard enough to leave marks. He didn't try to stop me packing, he mostly just watched. When I took the last bag to the door, he said, "It only talks when you're asleep." I asked him who. He looked past me toward the basement door and said, "It says I should have left you in the truck." I had never mentioned a truck. He and his cousins had taken one, but I had never heard anything about one of them leaving me anywhere because I had never been there. My sister heard it too, and she grabbed my bag and told me we were done. Later, one of Nate's cousins called me because apparently Nate had stopped answering them too. I asked what really happened on the trip. He got quiet and finally admitted they had found some sort of structure in the woods, built out of sticks and old cloth, just junk, tucked back off one of the trails. They had messed with it. They kicked it apart, laughed, and Nate had found something hanging inside and put it in the truck as a joke. The next morning, it was back in the woods. He swore that part was true. He also said Nate started acting strange on the drive home, especially after they stopped for food and came back to find the truck bed open. I never saw Nate again after I moved out. He texted for a while and then he stopped. A mutual friend told me later he went to stay with family in another state. I still think about that moment waking up and finding him already beside me, close enough that I could hear him breathing. And the thing that bothers me most now is he didn't look surprised to see me awake. He looked like he had been waiting for it. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
The story that I'm about to translate for you creeped me out so fucking bad. Also, the only reason this person is sharing this story is because they want to know if this has happened to anybody else. Y'all better say no right now. So this guy says that what has happened to him is the one and only paranormal event that has ever happened to him. This guy ends up saying that he got salmonella for eating out in the streets, and it was so bad that he was bedridden for days. He's an only child, and it's just him and his mom living in their house, and she was basically the only one taking care of him this entire time that he was sick. He does say that his best friend Julian would go to his house every single day just to drop off homework so that he wouldn't get behind. So there was this one day where he just felt the worst out of all the days that he's been sick, and he says that just thinking about that day felt like a really bad dream, like he was in and out of sleep basically. So he had been in bed asleep this entire time, and he ends up waking up thinking it's around 5 or 6 in the morning because everything was still dark. Because of how in and out of sleep he was, he had completely lost track of time. As he's sitting in bed, he says that he could smell food, so he knows that his mom's making him something to eat, and also his bedroom door is open and he could see the light coming from the kitchen down the hallway into his bedroom. That's also the moment that he realized that it wasn't morning time, it was probably dinner time, because again the mom was making food, and he was actually happy that it wasn't the morning time. He said that he really felt the need to like hug his mom. He was just really sick and he really needed her. However, that is also the moment when he heard it. Something that still torments him till this day. He heard his own voice. He says that he heard when his mom says, "What are you doing out of bed? You're so sick. Go back and lay down." And he heard his voice tell his mom, okay, I'll go to bed now. He was in shock because obviously he is in his bedroom. He is not in the kitchen with the mom, but he says that he clearly heard his voice. He heard something with his voice responding to his mom. Something that was in the kitchen with his mom. And as soon as his voice told the mom, you know, okay, I'll go to bed now, he can hear something coming down the hallway that was obviously going to go into his bedroom. When he realized that whoever that thing was with his voice was about to come into his bedroom or come near him, he closed his eyes so tight that he squeezed them shut. In that moment, he said he couldn't talk, he couldn't scream, he couldn't move, and that's all he could do. So as he's there in bed, eyes squeezed tight, he says that he heard when this thing didn't end up going into his bedroom, but just kept walking down the hallway, almost in the direction of the back door. So right in front of his bedroom is the mom's bedroom as well. And when he finally heard that thing like move past, he thought that that would be the opportunity for him to get up because he couldn't scream. He was in shock. But as he gets up, he is very dizzy and he's sick. And when he's about to go to that kitchen and tell his mom, hey, that was not me, and you know what is happening, is when his mom actually walks into his bedroom and tells him to lay down because obviously he was in no position to move. In that moment, he didn't say anything to his mom because he was trying to be rational. He was thinking to himself, I'm really sick, maybe because I've been in and out of like sleep, I thought I heard that, it could be a hallucination, or maybe it was a dream, but it was definitely not real. So his mom tells him, hey, dinner's almost ready, I'll bring it to you when it's done, but please don't get out of bed because you scared me so much when I found you in the living room in the dark. Chills. I have fucking chills right now. In that moment, he realized that the mom did see something that obviously looked like him and she thought was him, but he was never there. That was confirmation that what he heard was real. It wasn't a hallucination, it wasn't a dream. And he was like remembering when he woke up because he had heard people talking, but he couldn't make out what they were saying. So obviously they had been talking before the point that he started to hear that it was his fucking voice. That part that he actually paid attention to, he said, it was my voice. Like, I know it was my voice. And bro, just wait, because he's like, I don't know what you guys would have done, but after my mom tells me that, I didn't tell her that it wasn't me. I couldn't tell her that whoever she saw or spoke with or sent back to the room was not me. He says that it never happened again. He never heard this again, but he is terrified of thinking of what happened that night. My thing is, like, what if it did happen again? You just weren't there to hear it, and like the mom probably thinks that you're there and you're not there. I would not keep that to myself. I would not. But what do you guys think?
Were these people abducted by aliens? Not my story, but my father-in-law swears he was abducted on a camping trip in the northern Appalachians with about 4 other people. They hiked up near a lake and set up a campsite and set up camp. He says they all remember swimming, then eating dinner, but no one remembers cleaning up camp or going into their tents. They woke up about 10 yards away from their original site in the exact formation that they had set up the camp. But all of the little stuff was in the same spot, and there was a fire in the middle of the original area, but not in the new one. They pulled out a measuring tape my father-in-law had in his backpack from work and measured the distance between the stakes of the tent poles. And it was the exact distance between all of the tent poles from where they originally were in the new area. And before anyone says anything, my father-in-law is a super light sleeper and doesn't drink or do anything else, has no history or symptoms of mental illness, and was the first one awake. He still refuses to go hiking on that trail to this day. It's an easy hike, so he isn't just trying to be lazy and get out of it either. I was out in the woods on a summer day, running for a good hour or so, when suddenly I didn't remember where I was or who I was, only that I was free. I couldn't remember where I was going, the house I lived in, my siblings, my parents, nothing. But somehow that feeling was completely liberating, like nothing in the world mattered. I actually started walking into the woods because I figured I'd need to make a hut out of sticks to sleep in for the night, considering I was clearly traveling somewhere on foot and nowhere near home. After 5 minutes of collecting sticks, my memory started coming back, and I realized that my house was only 20 minutes away. When I got back to the house, the timer on my watch that I had started before the run said 4 hours. It should have only been 2, max. Lost time always makes me think of aliens. I believe I've been abducted multiple times, probably about once every 2 or 3 years since I was 8. I have been examined, but nothing invasive was ever done, and the extraterrestrials seem genuinely curious about humans. More often, it is just an interview via telepathy about how I am feeling and how things are going. The last abduction was about 6 months ago. I remember waking up, seeing figures through my bedroom window make their way into my home, never waking my girlfriend or dogs, and leading me out to their craft. One even seemed fascinated with one of my dogs, but I sort of thought of how angry and hurt I would be if anything happened to that dog, and he backed away. I remember when I was 9, I was paralyzed in my bed. All of a sudden, this blue light shines through the bedroom window. I see my covers fall off to the floor as I get lifted through the window. I remember bits and pieces of being on a table in a room as other children are being examined too. There was a tall creature that looked like a praying mantis in a robe over me that put these needles in my legs. It didn't hurt, and it was talking to me telepathically about the procedure, helping me walk. During that time, I had issues with my legs and had a difficult time walking. I black out and wake back up in my bed, minus the covers that were now on the floor. I had 3 needle marks on each leg where I remember the creature putting them. Ever since, I've been able to walk a lot better and have had no more problems. That is so nice. This freaked me out for a couple of weeks. It was so real that I found myself Googling alien abductions for days after. I struggled to get to sleep and had to take a little NyQuil just to settle myself. Anyway, here's the best I can remember from 5 years ago. I was sitting in something like a small movie theater with the lights on. There were a few other people in there with me, maybe about 10 of us. I was strapped into my chair, strap across my waist and one across my chest. All of a sudden, my chair lifted up to the roof and tilted so I was facing the floor. The strap across my waist was tight and lifted my top slightly, revealing my belly. I felt self-conscious that my belly fat was on show and moved my arm to adjust my top. Then the chair moved to my left at a high speed into a dark space. Next thing I know, I am in my bed at home lying on my front, which I never do, and on top of the blankets. I remained still as I woke up and was trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. I lay there listening for a while and could hear some scuffling. After a few minutes, I moved my foot a few inches to feel for my cat. He didn't wake up, which was not like him. I then heard a clear, quiet voice say, "She is waking up." I froze, with my heart beating at a crazy rate. I lay there for 3 hours, scared, too scared to move or switch the light on. My husband and cat peacefully slept while I was traumatized by the whole experience. Even when daylight came and I was up and about, I was still in fear. I told my husband and he just laughed. I never had a dream like that before or one since. Let us know in the comments if you have ever been abducted by aliens or if you've ever seen like a UFO or something.
This is why I don't care if it seems rude. I'll call 911, but I'm not stopping. So there's this 22-year-old girl who lives in Nebraska. Let's call her Molly. So Molly says she loves to drive, specifically long drives. She'll get in her car, it'll just be her music, and the open road. She said these drives really help her when she's stressed or overwhelmed or just kind of has a lot going on in her life. And she started doing it when she was younger and would want to escape the toxicity of her household because her parents were alcoholics. Molly says she preferred to drive at night because there was less traffic, and she would take back roads and old countrysides and all that good stuff. She had never had any problems doing this until this one night. So this particular night, she said she was just feeling very overwhelmed with everything going on in her personal life. So she tells her boyfriend she's going for a drive. And he's like, all right, cool, be safe, don't be out too long. It is getting kind of late. She's like, all right, I won't be. So she drives around the city for like 30 minutes, but I guess that felt too safe. My bad. Maybe just didn't do for her what she needed to do for her. So she decided to drive down one of those dark, windy, one-lane highways. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Like those back roads. So Molly says she keeps the car going at like 65 miles per hour consistently. She's going slower around bends and curves because she says she don't want to hit no deer in these backwoods. She says she was a little creeped out because it was really, really dark. She felt like she was in the middle of nowhere. The only lights you could see were her headlights. And she said even then she was straining to like see in the darkness in front of her. So she's like, well, I'm gonna just drive up to this roundabout that I know is here, and it'll either take me to a small town or it'll take me back to the city. The roundabout is about 15 to 25 minutes away. Just turn around. I feel like just turn around. Like you don't even gotta make it to the roundabout. Just do a little loop, little 3-point turn. back to the city. But Molly said she wasn't worried, even though it was just her out there. She was comfortable. So as she's coming around a corner, she notices a dark colored car with their hazards on about a fourth of a mile away from her. She said it was kind of angled as if they had like pulled over in a hurry and didn't get the whole car off of the road. So as Molly is coming up on this car, she realizes that the driver's side door is also swung open. Because of that and the fact that the car was in the street, she kind of angles herself to the other side of the road to go around it. While she's slowing down and going around it, she sees blood inside of the car. Now she sees the blood, but she doesn't see anybody. She said there's nobody in the street and there's nobody in the car. And see me, 911. Yes. There was a car in the middle of the road somewhere. Right. No, I didn't stop. No, I didn't. I kept driving actually. I actually drove a little bit faster than I was driving before. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It might have been. Yeah, y'all should probably go check that out. All right, have a good night. Okay, goodbye. Because I was never going to stop. But Molly says the area of the woods that she's in, there is no cell service. Yikes. I don't know. I'm sorry. I still would have kept driving. I would have. Eventually, we'll get a bar or two. I'll let somebody know eventually. I'm still not going to stop. Now, Molly says she ain't no dummy. She said she's watched plenty of the ID channel and Criminal Minds and read plenty of true crime books. So she said the situation definitely read danger. But she said there was a small part of her that was like, dang, what if somebody's out here really hurt? And these back roads don't get a lot of traffic and the temperature is well below freezing. I'm the only person who's probably going to be able to help them. And I understand that. As an immensely empathetic person, I would have that concern. I would keep driving and again call later, but I would feel that. So feeling this way, she still tried to play it cautiously. She's driving like really slow at this point and she rolls her passenger window down. She cuts off the music and she's like, yo, anybody out there? Y'all good? So she doesn't hear anything. So at this point, she's worried that they might be like passed out or hurt or something. So she's like, I'm gonna call out one more time. And if I don't hear nothing, then I'll just drive up until a point where it's some reception and make the call then. See, I like Molly. Me and Molly think alike. We do. Now, I don't know if I would have rolled out the window and called out. I don't know. I might not have. She's such a good Samaritan. I would like to think I would, just in case somebody was hurt, but also like, there are some crazy people out there, y'all. You can never be too careful. Anyways, Molly shouts out again. Yo, like, is y'all good? Y'all okay? Y'all need help? So at this point, she hears like a little rustling in the trees and then she hears a rough, yeah. So Molly is relieved. At this point, she's considering stopping her car and even getting out to make sure this person is okay. But then she realized three things at the same time. One, there was no damage to the hood of the car, the side of the car. There was no damage to the car, which was odd considering that there was blood on the door of the car. Two, she looked in her rearview mirror and realized that somebody had come from behind the other car and was headed to her car fast. Three, this person had on a mask. And she said this wasn't no ski mask or COVID mask or nothing. She said like it was one of them like purge masks, like one of them little face masks. Also, they were holding something in their hand. She said she couldn't really make out what it was, but she said from like the look, like the shape and the length, it looked like a crowbar or something. So Molly said she not fucking around with the fuck around. She puts the pedal to the metal. Amen. She starts driving like a bat out of hell. She says she's shaking, she's nervous, but she out of there. So her window is still rolled down and the music is still off and she can hear a man very clearly shouting at her. She don't know what he's saying and she don't give a damn. I wouldn't give a damn either. Get out of there. As she is speeding off, she takes another look in the rearview mirror because she was hoping that he didn't get into his car and was about to be following her. I would do the same thing. But y'all, the man is still standing in the middle of the road with the weapon. Not only that, another man comes out the woods with a mask on as well. He is also wearing a purge mask. This is why people don't be wanting to help people on the side of the road. Like, that's so unfortunate because you could really be out there stranded or helpless or hurt. But it's folks like this that make folks like me say, I hope they're okay. Molly also says that neither one of them have a trace of blood on them. So was this like a ruse? Because that's what it's giving. Molly not trying to find out. So she's speeding out of there. She gets to that roundabout, takes the exit to the town, and she finds a Walmart that thankfully still has cars and people parked in the parking lot. And she parks her car and breaks down. I probably would have broke down too. So she then calls her friend T. Her friend T is a police officer. So she's explaining what's going on, and he's like concerned for her safety. He's like, are you good? Is everything okay? She's like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, just super shaken up. I want to know what I should do about the situation. And he's like, well, it's out of city limits, so I can't do anything, but I can get in contact with the police from that jurisdiction to make sure they can get a statement from you. So she's like, cool. So she then calls her boyfriend, who's obviously freaked out and shaken up about the situation as well. And he's like, come home or I'm gonna come drive and get you. And she's like, nah, I gotta stay here. I gotta wait for the police to get here so I can make the statement. So they just stay on the phone with each other until the police get there. So after she gives a statement, she makes her way home, and she's obviously super paranoid for the rest of the night. She says she was afraid that they was gonna pull up to her house and finish whatever they thought they started. I be thinking the same way. I'm not gonna lie. Somebody side-eyed me too hard in the grocery store. I'm nervous they're gonna try to break in my house that night. But she never ends up hearing back from the police about the situation at all, unfortunately. So she really never got any answers. She says she has so many questions like, where did the blood come from? What were they planning? Why were they wearing masks? Sister girl, we don't need to know. We don't need to know. The good thing is Molly didn't stop. That's the takeaway from this story. Molly didn't stop. But Molly says she don't go on late night drives no more. And I don't blame her. Y'all stay safe out there.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. Whatever was knocking on our door that night wasn't human. My sister and I never talked about this story growing up, not after everything we experienced that night. It became something we both just wanted to forget and never think about again. The only person I ever told or even attempted at a conversation about this was my husband. And even then, I found myself rushing through it because thinking about it still freaks me out so much. Talking about it, actually saying the words out loud, and then subjecting myself to questions about it was awful. I was around 8 years old at the time, and my sister had to have been about 10. Our grandmother worked night shifts as a security guard at an old cemetery just outside our town. And when I say old, I mean old. This cemetery had been there for so long. Statues that at one point had stood tall and proud were reduced to piles of stone. Headstones were crooked and overrun by weeds and grass, and were so weathered that it was near impossible to read names and dates anymore. All of that complete, with rusted, creaking iron gates. As kids, we thought it was so cool. Creepy old cemetery that Grandma had basically unlimited access to, and sometimes she would bring us with her on the weekends when our grandpa was working late shifts as a police officer. We'd spend the night inside this little guardhouse near the entrance of the cemetery. It was basically a tiny one-bedroom room built with an old couch, a flickering TV, a kitchenette, and a desk where my grandmother kept her flashlight and radio. At that age, and up until this night, it honestly felt cozy. Years later, though, I found out something about that cemetery that completely changed how I remember that night. In the early 1900s, a circus train had derailed nearby. It was a terrible crash. The train had been transporting equipment, performers, workers, and animals, and it was so bad that there was almost no survivors. According to local history, many of the victims, including some of the animals, were buried in that cemetery. People in town apparently believed the place was haunted for decades, but my sister and I didn't know any of that back then. To us, it was just Grandma's job. Every single time she left the guardhouse to do her rounds, she gave us one rule. Never open the door. It didn't matter who knocked. It didn't matter what they said. Do not open the door. She went as far as to have this goofy little knock that she would always do when she was at the door. 3 quick taps, pause, then 2 more, just so that we were sure it was her on the other side. I remember thinking it was silly as a kid, just something fun Grandma did for us. Until this night. It was late, probably sometime after midnight. My sister and I were half asleep on the couch watching TV. The soft glow of whatever we were watching was filling up the cozy little space in blues and whites, and it was softly raining outside, so I could hear the soft tapping of the rain on the window. While we were in our own little world, we heard it. A knock. A slow knock at the door. Not Grandma's knock. and my sister and I both looked at each other almost immediately. I can still see the look on her face. Confusion quickly turning into fear. We sat there for a minute, not talking, listening, to make sure that we had heard it right, and if we would hear it again, but we didn't hear anything else. No talking, no footsteps. There wasn't any sign of a flashlight being used on the other side. So we continued to listen, because usually if our grandma ever forgot the knock, which was hardly ever, she'd at least laugh and call out to us through the door. But there was nothing. Just complete silence. My sister whispered over to me, maybe she messed up the knock. And I remember shaking my head immediately. No, Grandma would say something. Even at 8 years old, I knew something wasn't right. We just turned back to the TV, disturbed but trying to ignore what had happened. A few minutes passed, and then came another knock. Harder this time. 3 huge knocks. We were so startled that we jerked so hard our blanket slipped off the couch. You could feel the energy in the tiny room shift. I don't know if it was because we were so scared, or if whatever was knocking was shifting the energy in there, but it was heavy and unforgettable. My sister grabbed my arm and whispered, "Don't answer it." I muted the TV. I needed to clearly listen to what was going on, and the second that the room went quiet, another bang at the door, and possibly even louder than the last one and more violent. Like whoever or whatever was on the other side was angry that we weren't responding. We turned off the TV completely and pulled the blanket over ourselves, thinking that if we just pretended that we weren't inside, whatever was out there would go away and leave us alone. I swear to God, for several seconds there was complete silence. And for those few seconds, we were so hopeful that our little ruse had worked, but then 4 more bangs on the door. The door shook so hard that it rattled in the frame, and the knocks were loud and they were fast and they were desperate. Like whatever was out there wanted nothing more than to just get inside with us. My sister started crying quietly beside me, and I don't know if it was her fear or whatever was out there had some control over her, but she crawled off the couch toward the window near the door, and I remember whispering for her to come back, but she wouldn't. She extended her small, trembling hand out to the curtain and slowly pulled it back just enough to peek through, and the second she did, something heavy and large slammed against the door again. My sister gasped and practically threw herself backwards, scrambling across the floor back to the couch. I quickly whispered, "What is it?" And out of her pale face, she said, "There's nobody there." But right as she said it, another pounding hit the door, almost as if whatever was on the other side had heard her and was trying to prove her wrong. It was out there. It was pounding on the door, and it was going to get in. After getting back under the blankets and crying softly for what felt like ages, the knocking just stopped. No footsteps, no voices, no rustling, just complete silence. We stayed there, curled together for what felt like forever, until finally, tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap. Grandma's knock. But after what had happened, we didn't trust it anymore. We didn't move. We just sat there frozen, and then we heard keys jingling outside. The lock turned and the door opened. My grandmother stepped inside, looking confused, until she saw us huddled together, shaking on the couch. Immediately, her expression changed, and we told her everything. The knocking, the pounding, how no one was outside when we looked through the window. The first thing she asked was, "Did you open the door?" We both said no. The look of relief washed over her face so fast, it honestly scared me more than the knocking. She sat down beside us quietly and said, "Good, I'm proud of you girls." And after a few seconds, she looked toward the door and said something that I have never forgotten. "This place, it tries to mess with people." As if the cemetery itself was alive. Like she already knew that there was something there that liked pretending, that wanted to be invited inside. We never went back to work with our grandmother after that night. And years later, when my sister and I finally talked about it as adults, I asked her something. I asked if she was telling the truth about seeing nobody outside the window. She got quiet for a long time and then said, "I lied to you because I didn't want you to panic." Apparently there was something standing outside that door. She said it looked like a man at first, tall and motionless, but she said that the longer she looked at it, the less human it seemed. Its face was wrong, its arms were too long, and she said that the thing that terrified her the most was that it was smiling while it pounded on the door.